helping you find your new way forward to the best years of your life. This is a New Way Forward vodcast with your host, Paul Long.
It is not clickbait when I say, A, you never have to be old, and B, it's never too late to transition, pivot, or transform your life into probably the most ideal phase of your life. I'm going to prove that it's not clickbait because of all that I'm going to be sharing with you throughout this from a multitude of different angles. But let's first of all talk about you never have to be old. Well, what does old mean? Let me try this with you. I want you to know when I say this brief sentence, what you immediately envision. He's old. Now, if you're like every single person I've asked this question of in person, it's like someone that's old and decrepit and in decline, right? That's typically the answer, understandably. Now, let me ask you this, same thing. What do you notice in your mind's eye when I say, she's older? Well, I've heard a couple of people say, insightfully, I think, well, how am I supposed to know? Because I don't know who they are. And the point behind this is that, first of all, I really do believe from 15 years of researching, first of all, what to do with my life in this latter phase, as well as what other people are doing or what other people aren't doing and the consequences of it. And I really do believe that a lot of people become old because they think they're supposed to. And quite frankly, I can't really blame them too much because it makes sense. I mean, certainly we have the example of our, parents and grandparents or great-grandparents or whatever who, hit their 60s and went into decline for a multitude of different reasons. And society tells us that. Look at all the drug commercials out there. Look at just the language that we use. It's said that ageism, especially toward older people, is the last great ism. And some of the people who are the most guilty of practicing it are people who are older. Oh, I'm getting old. Oh, I'm sore. I'm getting old. Oh, I'm having a senior moment. Yeah, I forgot my car keys. Well, A, I forgot where my car keys were when I was 19 years old. And B, to be honest with you, I got out of bed a few weeks ago and I was like, and I actually said it myself. Couldn't believe it. I actually said it myself. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. Why am I sore? I'm sore because I played racquetball for an hour and a half the night before, like an intense game. And when I was 25 in athletic, I would sometimes wake up feeling the exact same way. So it becomes this assumption, this presumption, this stereotype that, well, I'm 60 years old, I'm supposed to be old. Oh, I'm 50 years old, I'm supposed to be in decline. That's not the case anymore. I'm a case in point in that when I had a recent birthday, and I'm not big on birthdays, I was lying in bed, before I got up thinking, yeah, I've been around the sun quite a few times here. But then I also realized that I am in better health than I was 10 or 20 years ago. And I am more excited and more fulfilled and feel more purposeful and more aligned with who I am than I was 10 or 20 years ago when I was doing something else and living a different lifestyle. So when you actually hear some of the new research and data and approaches to health that we can not just slow down or stall aging, but in some cases actually reverse it. I'm not saying in general that suddenly you're 60 years old and you're going to look and feel like you're 30, but actually most days I feel like maybe even better than I did in my mid-30s and such. But the first thing is that it starts with this attitude of, and getting rid of an attitude that at a certain age, I'm supposed to be old and that I'm done. I have played out my life. And especially when you consider, as I alluded to, that if you take moderately good care of yourself, the more vigorously you exercise, the better. Good nutrition, sleep, community, and you've got a purpose. You've got fulfillment. You can live healthy and active. I can into my 90s and independent. And for my sons who are in their early 30s, and quite frankly, other adults who are older than them, it could be 100. So when you say, well, 50's old and you're starting to wrap it up, you've only lived half your life. Or if you're 60 and you can live to, let's say, even 90, healthy, active, and independent, that's 30 years. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to do traditional retirement, which granted is right for some people, but more and more of us, it's not right for us. There isn't the relevance, the fulfillment, the things to do. And by the way, if you say, well, yeah, that's only 30 years, if you're 60 and you're going to live healthy, active, and independent until you're 90, well, think back 30 years. You were 30 years old. Look at how much life you've had, or even just 20 years, back to when you were 40. So this is the new reality of life and of aging that has never, ever existed before on this earth, except for one thing, by the way. Up until the mid-20th century, people were relevant, active, involved, purposeful until the day they died. It was only starting in the 50s that the concept of modern day retirement with pensions and Social Security and the ways of the world was enabled. And I know, and verified research has shown, that with a lack of purpose, with a lack of fulfillment and relevance and people, we go into decline. So to my point about never being old, you don't have to be, based on what you have up in your head and in your heart and what you're actually doing with your life. Because a lot of people are like, well, I want to live a long time. Well, I never want to be old. Well, here you go. You can be older and take advantage of this new reality of aging. In fact, Stanford University, and you see what I'm doing, I'm laying the rationale here for what you can end up doing with this new reality. Stanford University Longevity Center, a couple of years ago, they brought in, I think it was about 300 thought leaders, experts, scientists, social scientists, CEOs of companies, just the broad spectrum of people, to look at longevity, the new reality of longevity, or the longevity revolution. And they actually came up and identified a new phase of life. Here's what I mean about this, and this is my characterization for simplicity's sake. So the typical kind of view of our life in terms of phases is that in our youth, we grew up, we learned how to walk, we learned how to socially interact, we learned things in school. And then we became an adult, and we, in most cases, had a career, maybe a family. And then we hit retirement age, and we retired, and we declined and suffered and died. Maybe a little dramatic there, but I'm making a point. Well, now, what if you looked at it this way? Because this is the new reality. In our youth, we learned. And then we became adults, and while we're living a full, active, independent, meaning, this is my life, hopefully, it's almost like an apprenticeship. Yes, you're maybe raising kids, you're doing a career and everything, but then you reach what I call olderhood. And as Stephen Pressfield said, that's a time that you can go pro. You've gone from apprentice to pro. You've figured it out. And what better time in life to really make a determination of what you want than when you get older? And whatever that means. I mean, that could be somebody who's 35 or 75. The point is that the older you get, the more you know about yourself, and the more that you know about life, and the more you know about the world. And generally, when you get older, such as the case when I started this, first of all for myself, and now I share everything that I've learned, it was like, wow, yeah. The last major life transition I made, as I've talked about on YouTube, Substack, and social media, The last move that I made back in my early 30s, I did the wrong thing. I never really thought through in all parts of the life, as I've shown a unique way to use what's called the wheel of life. I have a video on that. I never really took my whole life into account. I just kind of thought, well, what can I do? Oh, I could do this. I can succeed at it. I can make money at it. And it'll probably be fun. Well, I was right, and I did succeed at it, but I never should have done it. I didn't have the self-awareness, nor just the general awareness, to sit there and say, what's right for me? It's time for me to design my life. I wish I had done it back then, and I didn't. But quite frankly, when I did start out 15 years ago, that is what I did. I said, whoa, we got to step back, and I got to think, what do I really want in this life, in all respects of it? Not just income or professionalism or how I'm asserting myself like this, but in terms of fulfillment, in terms of relevance, in terms of health, in terms of relationship, in terms of self-growth, in terms of making a difference, which has now become more and more and more important to me. And that's typical of people who are older. What about my community of friends and family and all that other kind of stuff? And designing my life to do it. So I did that in my late 50s. Mid-50s. I did that then. And now I'm reaping the benefits of it. And I'm having a better life, a more exciting life, a more fulfilling life, and a healthier life than I did back then, because I saw this opportunity that if I do these things, all of those things that I talked about, I can live a healthy, fulfilling, happy life independently into my 90s. I want to die young at an old age. And I didn't start looking at myself as an old guy and falling into the stereotype that society and marketers and parents and just examples from the past were showing me. So now we're going to pivot to like, okay, great. What are you going to do with it? Because, yeah, if you're, let's say, 50 years old, I'm even going to say, people that are the age of my sons, that 50 could very likely be the halfway point in your life. It's only halfway done. Okay, so what if that's 40? That's still a lot of life. What are you going to do with it? And again, as I've shared with you in other videos and write-ups, so many people of this modern age and the way we are as humans, wanting to be relevant, wanting to signify, wanting to have purpose and fulfillment, are going into retirement just la-di-da, expecting it's so easy and wonderful and everything. And then all of a sudden they're suffering. They're suffering emotionally and mentally and physically because they've lost all of that. And that's just not the way that we're wired as humans. So the bottom line is, what's available to pretty much virtually all of us is to make our olderhood, you pick the age for that. It could be 45, 50, 60, 70, whatever. And view it as my turn. As my turn. This is my turn in life. I know so much more about myself. I know the way the world is now, because what is a mega trend with outliers and early adopters such as myself is soon going to be the normal. My kids already are looking at their olderhood in the ways that I'm talking about. Of course, they're my kids. They've been hearing me talk about it, but it makes total sense to them. They're like, I get it. When I was still creating content for different corporations, I would sometimes have somebody on the client side in their 30s. Great career, making money, family, life is good. Hey, Paul, what's this new way forward thing you're talking about? And when I would bring up, this new reality, and then the possibilities and how you can actually step back and in really smart ways identify what a new way forward that's right for you and only for you and all the parts of your life is like, I got one or two responses. It was either like, wow, that changes my life now. I mean, just thinking about living that long. But then when I think I can actually step back and maybe use my golden handcuffs of a job to take the time like you did, Paul, to really figure out what's right for me. My gosh, I never even thought about that. Actually, I never really thought about the whole thing. I just assumed that I would retire. Now, the second response, by the way, was, that's interesting. I'll think about it. And then I'd run across them a couple months later and they'd say, oh, I haven't stopped thinking about this. This is like, me of all people almost can't find the words for it, because it's a life opportunity. It's a gift of the modern age, because society, yes, healthcare, even given the state that it is in a lot of countries, so many things are enabling us to do this. And people around the world are doing this. The boomers were the first ones, just as they changed the expectations of what it was to be young, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, peace movements, entrepreneurs. They're changing and been changing our expectations on age. And here's a quick example that's very relative to things that can be happened. There was a big trend that started about 20 years ago or so, of people, let's say in their 50s or in their 60s, who got broomed out of their job, laid off, made available to the market, when in fact it was because of their age. And they couldn't afford to retire. And in a lot of countries, certainly the US, most people cannot afford to retire and live that longer life. And so they were forced into reimagining themselves, redesigning their lives, and finding a way to earn an income. And in some cases, just earn an income. But in other cases, sometimes people were like, well, wait a minute, as long as I got to reimagine myself and redesign things, let's do something that I want to do, that speaks to my heart. My career, that was great and everything, but I was kind of doing just what I thought I was supposed to do. I was living the default life. Now I want to live the life that I want to live. And so many of them that I've talked to or read about have said, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, getting laid off. Because now I am living the most fulfilling life, one that is really and truly right for me. So you see what I've been building here is that from the beginning, it's like getting rid of the thought of, well, if I'm 70, I'm old and I'm in decline. Okay, yeah, you're probably in decline, but maybe not as much as you think, and you can ameliorate it, or even in some cases improve your stamina or your flexibility, whatever, because you've got the purpose that's driving you. Oh, and by the way, another huge success factor in people living a longer, healthy life is community of friends and family and colleagues and community in total. So I want to read you a quote that comes from Mark Friedman, who many years ago, he was one of the early adopters, created something called Encore that deals with all this. That was making ways for people to continue to make a contribution, whether it be through starting a business or being a social entrepreneur or being involved in organizations. Wrote a brilliant book. But he said, and I love this quote, he says, quote, "Isn't there something to be said for racking up decades of know-how and lessons from failures as well as triumphs? Shouldn't we aspire to build on that wisdom and understanding? After years of studying social innovators in the second half of life, individuals who have done their greatest work after 50, I'm convinced the most powerful pattern that emerges from their stories can be described as reintegration, not reinvention. These successful late blooming entrepreneurs weave together accumulated knowledge with creativity while balancing continuity with change and crafting a new idea that's almost always deeply rooted in earlier chapters and activities." So to me, that ties in with what I'm talking about. It's taking everything that we are, everything that we're capable of. The older employee, the older entrepreneur, what do they have? They have all those years of experience. They have advanced skills and talents. And they may be even as is the case with me and so many others that I know in this space, bringing a real passion to doing something with it. And yeah, you know what? I am closer to the end than the beginning, too. This may not be my last hurrah. Who knows what I may pivot to into the future? I'm open to it. That's the new way of the world. But it's got even greater meaning in a deeper context than it had before. What am I going to do with the final years, decades of my life, this last phase, which I call olderhood? I sure as hell am not going to be calling it retirement. God, what an awful word. Think of the synonyms for retire. Withdraw, quit, go away, give up. No, it's right for some people, though. But really looking at it is it's my turn to do what I want to do. Now, I put that out there. I'll put it out there many, many times. But there was one where I put it out, and I got the most amazing responses from people in the comments section. So I just want to go through them quickly with you. From Susanna: I really didn't think when I was younger that I would have to reevaluate my life time and time again. Welcome to life. I just thought I would just go along and take what life has to offer with no thought that I would be able to influence it for the better in any way at all. So glad that I learned I can, and I'm practicing it every day. I've just joined the mega trend that I've been talking about. From Clemens: I'm 64 and I'm pivoting again. From Laura: as we get older and tune into who we are and what we love doing more and more, why wouldn't one want to pursue that? To stay engaged, inspired, and challenged. From Scott: it all starts with a growth mindset, believing you are capable of learning new things and growing. Age doesn't matter. And then from Kim: absolutely, if you didn't know your age, would you act it? And then here's a quote from Mark Middleton that was in that post that I did. When we age with strength, creativity, and passion and purpose, we are not defying age. We are defining age. It's an opportunity for you to define yourself and your life in this phase of life. And quite frankly, you're probably with the majority that this may be the first time you really, really defined who you are. The society and marketers and parents, as I said before, not defining what you should do and who you should be. There's a certain freedom as you get older. So, as I said in the beginning, you don't have to get old, and it's never too late. And in fact, the older you get, it's maybe the better opportunity, whatever the heck it is. I talked about income, but it doesn't have to involve income. I know people who are pretty well set, good for them, that are into so many different things. It makes my head spin. They defined what they wanted this phase of life rather than just falling into the assumptions of I'm getting old and I'm going to retire and blah, 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 blah. You know the story. This is your opportunity. And here's the last thing I'll say about it. You're capable of finding a new way forward that's right for you. Because if it's right for you, you're capable for it. You're capable of doing it when you have this kind of awareness that I've been talking about. When you actually stop and think about this, and I encourage you for the next 2 or 3 days, find a moment to just think about this. To think about the essence of what I've said about you actually defining your life, and that I've been living under the pretext of a bunch of stereotypical BS. What would I do? What would I do? Because once you get going, your brain and maybe the universe conspires with you. Once you start thinking about it with effort, all of a sudden you start thinking about it all the time. And you get excited. And you start realizing possibilities. And then you want to get going. You've busted through the bubble of resistance to change. And you've opened yourself to an opportunity to have the years ahead be some of, if not the very best of your life.
Learn more ways to enhance your life
and discover a new way forward that's perfect for you by watching these videos or any others on my channel. Oh, and be sure to subscribe.